Hi, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Penny, for the invitation to be here today and for this great series. I do have a long background in marketing and communications in Mendocino County, and I'm not working in that space so much right now, but I just had to say yes to this because of how important I feel like agritourism is for our agricultural community and for our economy overall. And I think this, from what I've seen of this series so far, it's been so practical, so valuable, and I'm glad to be able to participate and share a bit from my expertise in web and marketing. So I do. Oh, I also want to say that what I'm spending most of my time in these days is cannabis policy. And there's a really cool intersection going on right now between regional cannabis policy and agritourism. And I know there's some folks from the cannabis industry who are in this session, which is exciting. And part of what I'm working on a county level, I work as the policy director for the Cannabis Business Association of Mendocino County. And we have helped introduce some new regulation around cannabis tourism that's actually happening before the Board of Supervisors in the next month. So I think there's a confluence of all of the different agricultural sectors kind of arriving at this need for a coherent approach to agritourism and for businesses to capitalize on this, whatever agricultural sector you're in. So thank you for having me. And honestly, 35 minutes is such a short amount of time to dive into any marketing topic. I've taught many marketing seminars in the past and could spend 2 hours just talking about Twitter. So the goal of today is to offer some principles around effective marketing strategies, like a lens to look through at whatever you're doing, and some inroads for exploration. And then next week, I'll be back here doing a session on developing a marketing plan. And that also will be too short and could be many hours long. So, I just want to give that caveat that it's like, I know we're limited by time, but I hope we can have a good discussion about how to think about marketing and web strategies that will help meet everybody's needs. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now and pull up my presentation. Okay, and then let me just move this into present mode. Okay, so I'll start by saying that the principles of effective marketing for web, social media, and all other marketing tools are not different for agritourism, right? Where there's a lot of best practices we draw from. And then there are aspects of marketing for agritourism that are special and unique that we want to highlight. So some of my talk is just going to be about high level thinking around marketing, what everybody needs to be considering, and then some specific things that we want to think about with agritourism. I would love to start with a question for everybody that's on this call. If you're willing to just pop something in the chat. I want to help tailor this talk to be as relevant as possible to this audience. So if anybody has like a burning marketing goal, the one thing on your to-do list that you keep pushing aside for marketing, one question you have about where to start with your marketing, this could be little or big, but if you want to drop that in the chat now or at any time during this discussion, I'd really like to hear what's like hot on your mind, so that I might be able to share super relevant examples or insight based on what you're coming to the table with. Okay. So please use the chat, and then we will have about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. And I want to say thank you to Brendan McGuigan for providing all of the photos for my presentation. He's a local marketing strategist who works with a lot of hotels and wineries. And I'm not a photographer, but because a presentation looks much better with photos of the place, I wanted to bring in one of the principles of best practices for agritourism marketing, which is create a sense of place with this presentation. And Brendan offered me these photos. So thank you to him. Okay, so good. Thank you for the questions that are coming in. I'm just going to say them out loud, and so that everybody knows the things that I will plan to talk about: how to gain followers, how to reach the right people, and how to automate things in social. Okay, so I'll try to get to all those. All right. So next slide. Okay, so I want to start by just a conversation of what does marketing include? And sometimes we have a narrow view of marketing, and sometimes just the word marketing makes people just curl up and want to retreat. Like, many folks don't get into business because they love marketing. They get into business because they love the thing that they do, whether that's making wine or growing apples or being a waitress, you know, and then the marketing is the everything else. So I think it's often overlooked, and sometimes not. And sometimes it's just like, I've worked with so many small businesses and nonprofits that it's just a 4-letter word. They don't want to step into it. But I think sometimes it's helpful if we can frame how we think about marketing, which is that it's everything you do to share your story. And I think this was really well highlighted in the last presentation and tour. It's everything that others are saying about you. So your marketing also includes what people tell their friends after they leave your site, or after they drink your wine, or after they stay in your hotel. It includes all of the what is remarkable really means, you know, giving a remark about it. And our marketing is most successful when it's not just what we're doing, but it's what we have catalyzed, and that we have created something, whether that's an experience or a product, that is encouraging other people to post on their social media, share about it, write a review. So some of our marketing we control, and that's what I have put on this slide. It includes every single thing you do, from the A-frame in your parking lot. We notice when something looks nice, right? Even if it's a parking sign. It might be the song that people associate with your business. It's everything visible that you put out into the world. With agritourism, this includes many of these standard things that are on the slide here in terms of web, ads, collateral. It also includes listings on third-party sites. So I think there were some great examples of, you know, where you list hotels, but this could be Yelp. This could be Facebook reviews. There's a lot of different places that within agritourism that are really driven by social media and by rankings and other search algorithms. So all of that collectively. One piece that people often don't think about when they think about marketing is not so much what you do, but what you say and how you say it. And I just want to point out that that's what I mean by brand voice, which is here in the bottom corner. That brand voice is the tone or personality behind everything you do. And it's the central thrust that guides all of your marketing. So when you're choosing your font, you're actually coming back to this question about, you know, what is my personality and how do I want to communicate with the world? Is my font really fun? Is it really kind of stern and professional? Is it a little bit farmhousey? Is it very clean and crisp? All of these things, these design decisions, the aesthetic decisions, how you shoot a video, how you present your website, they all come back to this central question of brand voice. And sometimes we start doing the things before we've asked ourselves those questions. So if you find that, you know, there's incongruity in the different marketing pieces you're putting out, it probably has to do with not really having a coherent approach to what your company personality is. And this is important when you're visitor facing, because people get a sense of who you are through all the things you put out. So having a coherent sense of what is that personality is going to help accomplish what one of the folks asked about in the questions, is getting the right people in. They are going to see if they are the right people and if you are the right place or thing for them because of this personality and the alignment that they sense through everything. So where to start? We've got all of these different, that was a big list, and each one of those lists could have had a sub list attached to it. Where I like to start always with any marketing project is knowing what your goal is. Before I want to talk about a website or a video, or a brochure or a sign. I want to understand what you want to accomplish. And people often skip over this piece because they're really attached to what the outcome is that they want in terms of the deliverable. So they say, okay, we've been talking about building a new website for years. We need to build a new website. So let's build a new website. And the goal becomes building a new website. But that can create just as many problems if approached that way. And, you know, I've had many clients come in and ask for a website. And my very next statement is often, well, let's figure out what you want to accomplish with having your website, because I want to know that the website is the best way to get there. And most people do need a new website, or they need an uplift on their website. But without knowing what you want to get out of your website, it's really hard to make good decisions. And I offer an analogy, which is the car analogy. If somebody came in and they said, I want a car, I would say, okay, well, what do you need your car to do? Because if I were to just bring you into a car lot and your only goal is to get a car, it literally doesn't matter what car you drive away with, but it matters. So we start asking more questions like, what kind of features do you want your car to have? Does it need to be all-wheel drive? Do you need, you know, what kind of cargo capacity do you have? Do you have pets? Do you have kids? What kind of mileage do you want to get? What kind of fuel do you want to use in your car? Are you interested in electric? There are literally like 100 questions that we could ask before we ever want to go step onto a car lot or start doing a search. And the same is true with your website, because every single website has different functionality built in, even the platform you use and how you're going to update it. These are all really important questions to ask from the beginning, because I've had many clients go out and just get a website designed, and then they're not happy with it. And there's multiple levels at which they're not happy. But usually what they find out is that just getting a new website didn't solve the problem. And so the goal is really identifying the problem that you want to solve, or the opportunity that you want to take advantage of. So in setting goals, I like to use this framework called SMART goals. And this is just a really basic marketing tool that allows us to think about what we want to accomplish so that we know what we're moving towards. So SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. And this is what allows us to shift from like, I want a website, or I want a car, or I want to do social media. And, you know, maybe in your mind, you've heard that you should post, you know, 3 times a week on Facebook and like at least one Instagram story a day. So on one hand, that's measurable, but that's really only a measurable outcome in terms of, you know, taking action, not really the results that you want to get. And maybe it's not very specific, because if I'm just like, okay, I need to post, but I don't know what I'm posting about, your post could end up being all over the map and maybe not really getting anywhere. So for all goals, I recommend using this kind of lens of, is it specific? Is it measurable in that like a year from now, can I see if I've accomplished it? Or even a month from now, did I do those things every day or on the schedule that I thought was most important? Is it attainable? Get more followers is not a good goal, because more is not specific or really measurable, and you can never really get there. Is like, is more ever enough? So having certain awareness of thresholds and relevant, this is super important. You might feel like it's really, really essential to produce a video for your site, but maybe your signage is so poor that people are driving by your driveway all the time. And so their first experience of your business is that they can't find you. And so from the beginning, they're like frustrated, disoriented, their cell phone's not working. Relevant means really looking at what is most important to meet your specific needs at that time, and what is like short term and what is long term. And then time bound, you know, having you know, a beginning, middle to end to things, and a check-in point. Like, I think one important part of timelines is there's a certain point you're going to review what you've been doing and see if it's working and see if the data and the results reflect that you've, that you're being successful. So there's a lot of ways to look at measurable impact. So it could be number of bookings you receive. It could be the number of hits your website is getting, your performance in Google search, the amount of times you're tagged or shared in photos on social media, sales, obviously. It might look at, growing a specific segment of your business. So if you're more interested in doing weddings, looking at the specific metrics around that and segmenting that out versus, sales overall. All of these kinds of metrics can actually track real impact of what you've been doing. And this is going like one giant level deeper than just, okay, we didn't have a website a year ago, now we have a website, but knowing if that website is the car that's going to drive you to where you really want to go. And I'm just going to check in on chat. Okay, it's hard for me to see the chat, just so you guys know, so I want to check in on it and make sure I'm talking about things. So once you have a sense of your goals, which I realize is, I'm kind of breezing through this, and you could spend an entire day goal setting with your team. Like, what do we really want to achieve? And I can tell you that all of that time you put in to figure out what your goals are is going to save you tons of time and money in terms of actually developing a website or a video or a marketing plan, because you're going to know why you're doing it. And that's actually a really great time and space to engage a consultant. People often engage consultants at the point where they want to do the thing. So like, hire a videographer and you bring them in, and then you're not even really sure exactly what you want to accomplish, or a web developer. And a web developer's job is to build a really good website, but they're not always very, it depends who you work with, but they're not necessarily a strategist to figure out how you should do that. So they're going to ask you, what do you want me to do here? And I'll go build it. And that, I know that happens a lot with folks, especially as you want to add something new to your business. You just bring in like a technician to actually build it, but they aren't thinking about the whole picture. So all that upfront effort can really be worth it. Additional upfront effort that is essential is turning the mirror towards who you want to reach. Oftentimes as business owners, we're so caught up in our experience. Like, we're thinking about what it is that we do, what matters to us, what we offer. And we are not really thinking about the consumer. So we might think we have the best thing ever, or just, we're just thinking more about the operations, like getting the bathroom cleaned every hour, which is super important. These kinds of details really matter for customer experience, but we aren't necessarily thinking enough about our customers from the onset when we start our marketing. So all of our decisions about what we do and what kind of tools we engage with should be based on knowing your market and following the law of attraction to attract those folks to you. We're far beyond the era of just like mass marketing in terms of, a few TV stations owning all the airwaves, and then you paying a whole bunch of money for ads. Like, now marketing is so nuanced, it's so niche and so specific to target audiences that the more you know about who you want to reach, like, the better money you spend getting to them. So how do you do that? This involves asking a lot of questions. So, and this is around understanding your target audiences. Knowing your market in terms of marketing term is profiling your target audiences. And you want to start with kind of an understanding of, do you have a key primary audience? And then are there like secondary audiences? And your primary audience is usually tied to, your higher margin conversions, like where you're making more money. And then your secondary audiences might be other products or services or offerings that you offer, or people who help actually influence those primary audiences. So this conversation is really could be applied to both. And it's a set of questions that you want to begin asking from the very beginning. Take yourself out of your role as business owner and put yourself in the shoes of your customer, like embody them. And when I've done this with clients, we've literally created profiles where we've found a photograph of somebody who embodies that exact target customer, given her a name, written up a life story about her, and then answered these kinds of questions. Who are they in detail? Not just general market demographics like woman, 35, 2 kids, but like, where does she work? Where does she live? Why is she choosing to drive versus fly right now? You know, really get cozy with who these folks are. And you know these people, like you have them in mind. You have the stereotypes and the archetypes from running your business in your industry that you actually could put a name on these and draw a picture like faster than you would believe. We often just don't think about it in these terms. So in addition to like demographic stats, what do they care about? What really matters to them? Is it price? Is it value? Is it convenience? Is it luxury? Like, what are the things that are framing their experience? And also, what are the types of things that are going to frame their search engine queries? Like, what are they going to go type in? This helps you get to all of that information. What motivates them? Is it that they want to unplug, that they want to relax? Is it they want smart devices? Do they want to be close to a main highway, or do they want to be far off the beaten path? Like, what are they looking for in a trip or in a product that they're going to purchase? What are they worried about? You know, their kids being, you know, entertained while the adults have something to also worry about. Their pets, you know, is it going to be too hot in the car for their dog? You know, what are the kinds of fears or concerns? COVID, you know, how is it that you can, through your marketing, address the types of questions they ask, like even before they ask them? So when they get to your site, you have information available for them that just provides all the basic information, so that they know, you know, are they going to have Wi-Fi? Whatever it is that your target audience may be worried about, being able to think about those things and actually market those things through your social and otherwise is really, really valuable. What are they inspired by? You know, people want and need more than ever a sense of hope. What is it that you're creating that speaks to those aspects of humanity, that inspires and excites people? And this is my favorite question of all. What question are you not asking about them? And this is something that you can literally like look at what are the FAQs that you get from your customers, and you will figure out what is the question that you're not asking them, because they're going to keep asking it of you. So through your experience, or, you know, by testing it out on people, doing a little focus group, just asking yourself what it is that you're not thinking about from the eyes of a consumer is so, so valuable. Oops. Okay. So asking those questions about your goals and then about who you're trying to reach allows you to start developing a marketing plan that is driven by results, versus what I would say just kind of this spaghetti on the wall kind of approach to marketing. That developing a marketing plan is a roadmap that helps you say, these are my goals, these are the people I want to reach, how do I get them there? And that becomes your roadmap, like specifically how you bring the people you want to reach to your business and then convert to the results that you're looking for. And this simple connection is what I often find missing when we are just jumping at the specific deliverables before putting a plan on paper. And I want to say, you know, that marketing plans only work if like the whole team is really engaged in them. And if it's just one person who writes it up on a piece of paper, it's going to just die in people's emails. But a good marketing plan is going to have the buy-in from the people who are actually interfacing with all of your different customer bases and your target audiences, and where you all feel like you're on the same path together, that you know why you're doing what you're doing, and you know when you're going to be able to check in and see, is this working or not working? And I like to really highlight the distinction between results and activity. One thing I see a lot is that businesses will hire like the youngest person in any room and say, you should do our social media, because you probably know how to do social media. There's a lot of risk in that kind of approach, because you're not necessarily tying, a skill set in using a tool with a skill set in marketing or storytelling, and you can mistake activity, like a certain number of posts, for actual results. So I think that it's really important to look at the nuance in how we take on work so that it's intentional and meaningful, and it's not just noise, and you're not just developing a bunch of fans, but they're not the actual audiences that you want to communicate with. So as a starting point, like the way that I like to think about the whole universe of web, which is many, many pieces. I'm like trying to break this down into something kind of simple in this moment to illustrate this, is that your website is your virtual home. Like for almost every business, the place where you want to convert them is your website, or it will be another listing. In agritourism, it's often, like a site that offers your, your hotel booking. But for many of you, your website is going to be the place that either they do the conversion where they book something, or they get the information they need to come visit you. So this is your home, and you want to make it welcoming, like a welcome mat, the lights on, nice flowers in the garden, and the basics, like can they see your address clearly on your website? Can they see your phone number? Is there an easy to navigate map? Are there little tips that, alert them to if there's going to be something that's kind of, finicky, like your driveway? In rural Mendocino County, these are all really important issues. Do they need to download the map before they get out there? Because if once they get on your road, is there no cell signal? And so then they're going to be lost. Like making your home welcoming in every way possible, and putting your, your best face forward on your website. Sometimes our website feels like the afterthought because we've spent so much time building, the actual experience. But that website is the first experience for a lot of folks. So keeping that in mind. I view everything else that you do on the internet in terms of search engine optimization, which would involve keywords on your site, social media, your listings, your Yelp page. All of these things are the breadcrumb trails. They're all leading people towards your website or the place where they're going to book or reserve. And having a sense of what are those trails that you want to put out there, and having a variety of them, and not putting all of your eggs in the social media basket is really important. It might be that, you could really do some things to optimize your search engine listing and be bumped way up when people search for, hotel in Mendo. And that might be more important than just posting on social media all the time. So you want to make sure that your breadcrumb trails overall are intentional and leading towards where you want them, and that you've got the right folks doing the job. I really like doing presentations, but I actually really hate doing social media. So just because we have skills in one area doesn't mean that they necessarily translate into others. And just because we're good at certain types of communication doesn't mean that we have the skills to be the best voice for the company. And whoever is the voice for the company, I think we need to come back to the central question of like, do we have a common understanding of our personality, so that whoever's tweeting or posting or writing our description for Google Maps is using the same tone and the same kind of vibe in everything that we do, so that there's a consistency in how we appear across all the platforms as well. So the fourth principle that I want to introduce that applies to all marketing is authenticity, and where it really lands powerfully when we're talking about agritourism is creating a sense of place. We travel because we want to go somewhere else. We want to be somewhere different. We get excited about travel because we have a feeling of what the texture and the energy is going to be of that experience before we ever get there. Or we've heard of it, we have this idea. There's so many different kinds of experiences that you can offer. And the key is not to try to be everything to everyone, but to be the right thing for the right people. And by creating a sense of place in your marketing, you can do that and help draw in those that are going to be interested in what you're about and what you have to offer. And authenticity looks not just like one thing, it's many things. But I like to say, like, the first thing we have to do with our marketing is take off that weird, stuffy marketing cap that comes on for some folks. As soon as they start thinking about marketing, they tense up. And then when you write something, it's like you suddenly don't sound like yourself anymore. So the first thing, I say is like, take off that hat and know that being exactly who you are and what you guys have to offer is your value. It is your unique selling proposition. Like what you've already got. This region, all of the counties that are being included in this conversation are incredibly unique. California is one of the most sought after tourist destinations in the entire world. You already have authenticity, so you don't have to create it. You just need to capture it and surface it in a way that other people can get what it is. It literally doesn't matter if you have an outhouse or if you've got like a really fancy bathroom. It just matters that you're showing what it is that you have. And so the kinds of people who are going to come are into it. They're into you. And that's what authenticity means. It also means bringing people there virtually in ways that are hard to do if they've never visited before. So, or visually, you want to bring them, that it's hard to accomplish that visually if they've never visited you before. So simple videos, photos. I peppered this presentation with just pictures of Mendocino County to ground us in that's what we're talking about here. And you want to make sure that your pictures evoke the right sense of place. And it's really well worth it to spend a whole bunch of money on getting those pictures ready so that you have them when you need them, as well as taking the very low pro camera shots all the time to be authentic in the moment. You want to have a mixture of both of those. And that can really, really pay off to have an approach where you've got a stockpile of great images as well as a regular plan to collect them. Authenticity is not just connected to, our audio and visual. It's also just about, being really clear and honest in your offerings and having a lot of sites that I look at, you don't really get a sense of what it is that they offer until you get on the phone and call them. And today's consumer isn't into that. They want to know what they're looking at before they pick up the phone. So just being accurate, being detailed in your description, spending a little bit more time explaining things actually makes people feel more comfortable and less like beware of what they might be getting into. And this has nothing to do with price tag. It just has to do with information and having your listings be accurate. Okay, so I have included a couple links that I think do an excellent job of creating a sense of place on their website. But I actually, because I knew that this would be too short and I wanted to make it highly valuable, I wanted to keep the presentation part succinct as a departure for our conversation. And I'd love to jump into some of these questions and invite new questions based on the principles that I shared so far. So I'm going to pull up the chat so that I can see it. And please dump things here. I'd love to talk about your business and get into some of the details about how this looks in practice. Okay, so I'm going to go from the top. How do I reach the right people for our place? How do you gain followers? And how do you bring in income? So, I think income, every marketing plan has to accompany a solid business plan. They can't go without the other. Like you can't have a good business plan without a marketing plan and vice versa. And so I think, looking at income streams before you ever start building a website is imperative. And working with, a business, I think there's some really good business coaches through the local small business development centers who can help you look at, okay, where are you going to actually make money? Because it's easy to develop new initiatives that are not necessarily profitable. And I know that this is part of what we test out and that, it's part of the experiment of doing business, but having a sense of where you're going to make money to channel your marketing is really important because there might be things that you do that you love. They don't make you any money, but they're always going to be part of what you do. Maybe it's the jam that you sell and everybody loves you for the jam, but you don't make a lot of money off the jam, but you make money on the hotel room that they stay in. Cool. So you know where you're making your money and you know where you're, developing your brand, and they're different, but you've got a clear sense of that. So gaining followers on social, I always come back to like, okay, so what kinds of followers do you need versus just what volume? And what's really scary and cool about social media now is the sheer amount of data that they collect on all of us that are using any web-based tool. Like, they know where you live, they know what you like, they know what you do in your spare time, they know what you're shopping for on Amazon. Like, social media has an incredible amount of information on all of us. So as you're looking at building up your following, there's kind of paid ways to do that, and there's organic ways to do that in the most basic sense. And if you choose to engage in, which I think is recommended, I think it's a really good idea to look at paid advertising on social media and on Google Ads. If they're very strategic and your ads are really speaking to the kinds of demographics you want, and you can go in and you can actually, as a business on Facebook and Instagram, select really specific market demographics. Like, you could choose women between the age of 40 and 50 in Sacramento, and you could have your ad be shown to them. So that is a really good strategy for gaining followers as a part of approach. I never recommend that as your only approach, because I think it can come across as inauthentic if all you're doing is relying on paid ads to try to get yourself out there. I couple that with really great organic content. And great organic content will be directly tied to your target audiences. In your post, you'll start addressing a lot of the questions that I asked, like, what motivates them? What are they looking for out of a trip? Will you feature a lot of people with dogs and like, show them a dog running in your fenced yard at your winery or something? Like, wow, cool. So like, I can go drink wine and my dog has a place to run around. That organic content, when tied to your target audiences, is a really strong way to develop followers. Reaching the right people for our place. Don't want people with the wrong expectations. Like, so important. And I think, a lot of the principles that I addressed will help you solve that problem, by having transparency, having authenticity, having really clear information. You having a sense of who you want to reach is going to help you develop all of your marketing to attract them, and it will naturally repel the folks that are like, oh, okay, I see what they're about. That's just not what I'm looking for on this trip. Like, I really want a more on-grid trip, or I want a more off-grid trip, and maybe they're in the middle. So being clear about who you are and what you're up to is going to help you figure that out naturally, as well as paying for ads that put you exactly in front of the kinds of people that you do want to reach, and that can be all kinds. That can be YouTube ads, it can be print ads. There's a lot of ways to put yourself in the right place. Automations for posting and social. So the second part of this question, I'm not sure what you mean. So if you could jump back in the chat, and the best practices for name recognition, I would love to hear just specifically what you mean about name recognition. Automations and posting and social. So I think that all the automation tools are pretty equivalent. I've used them in the past when I have regular content. So what this is asking about is it's called a social media client, and it's basically like a dashboard that's third party that you can use to post across your different social media accounts. So it could be like, there's Buffer, I think HubSpot has one. I've used so many in the past. It allows you to sort of plan things out and make sure that your posts go up on a regular schedule. What I would say about that is there is value in doing that, especially if you've got a marketing plan and you've got really great content and you know who your audience is and you're going to schedule certain things. But I would never rely on that alone, because there's two things that happen. One is you never log on, or you don't log on as much, and then you miss all of the chances for organic interaction, which are super important in social media. Social media is very much a two-way street. So it's not just about what you're putting out, but what you're liking on and resharing or commenting on for others can be equally as important. And if you rely too much on your dashboard, you miss that organic engagement that comes from actually getting on to post. Secondly, it doesn't allow you to be responsive to like current moment things, like whether that's the tulips blooming or something that's happening in the news or whatever, you can become a little bit like formulaic in your approach. So I recommend, if you're going to use a dashboard, which can be really great for following a marketing plan and getting content out consistently, that you also mix it in with organic, more spontaneous posts as well. And you don't rely only on the dashboard. So how do you evaluate the effectiveness of billboards or social media? To me, this is all about tying it to results. There's some results that are harder to measure, like billboards can be hard to measure in a sense if you're not like asking people how they heard about you, which is one thing. It's such a simple strategy and very few people do this. In every interaction, if I was running a hospitality business, I would ask everybody how they heard about me. It's some of the best market data you can collect. And this can happen, at the check-in when they arrive at your place. It can happen in comment cards. It can happen via email communications, quick little thing, like 3 things. How did you hear about us? People could check a box. It's so underutilized. I literally yesterday I saw a billboard for a service, and then I looked up the company, and then they had a "how did you hear about us" thing, and billboard wasn't on the list. And I was like, because I'm a marketing person, I actually like to give good feedback. They didn't have billboard on there, and they actually were paying for a billboard. So it's really hard to measure. But if you ask people, you will find out. And there's certain types of marketing that are just kind of about exposure. You have to put something in front of people many, many times. But without asking, you don't know what got them to pull off the road if it's something like that. With social media, I measure the effectiveness by, is it leading to the conversions I want? So sometimes the conversion is clicks through to my website. Sometimes it's an actual booking, but you want to have a sense of, is it driving more traffic over time? And you can, through your Google Analytics on your website, you can look at how many leads you're getting from social media. So I think those are really good indicators, clicks and conversions, not just followers alone, because you could have a lot of followers who love what you do, but they're not necessarily leading to more traffic, but they could be leading to more exposure. So when I say traffic, I mean like actual business traffic and sales. But if they're like amplifying your brand and getting the word out about you, that's also serving you. Okay. So Brian's question. This is about the cannabis industry. To develop and market coordinated destination products that reach and attract the cannabis motivated travel audience, research has identified, or travel audience research has identified specifically those sub audiences are interested in agritourism, cultural experiences, nature experiences, and sustainability. So first of all, I love that research exists around this specifically. And I often see that marketing is not tied to the available research. And I've seen that happen at a county level. We did a survey years back where they found that most travelers and tourists in Mendocino County were interested in local food. And I'm a huge local food nerd and ambassador and help support local farms, and did not see the county meaningfully capitalize on this when we had that data. And so I want to say that this data is really, really valuable. And when we can translate research about specific interests into our marketing strategy, that really allows you to profile your target audiences so much better. So Brian, if we know that this is what people care about, they want agritourism, they want cultural experiences, they want nature experiences, they care about sustainability, our marketing should speak to, we offer all of these things. Like, this checks all your boxes. And we want to highlight that through photos, through offerings, through tour packages. Like, that traveler is out there, they're ripe for the picking. You just need to create an offering that will appeal to them and make it easy for them to engage with those things. Okay, here's a question about domain names and how to pick a good domain name. Would love your feedback on, how a domain name can impact SEO. So great question. We're always balancing a couple of different factors with a domain name. Is it memorable? And is it short enough that somebody can type it in? And sometimes what's memorable is not short, but you don't want people to screw it up if the only way that they're going to interface with you is like seeing your domain name and then typing it in. But for most people, that's not how they're going to find you. They're just going to type your name in. So if the name of your business is Joe's Ice Cream Stand, they might not remember your domain name, but they're going to go type in the search engine Joe's Ice Cream Stand, or into Google Maps, and they're going to find you. So the domain name is not as important as having a good website, because what allows you to get found is having a website that has, you know, your keywords on the pages, or your Google Maps listing accurate. Because that's how most people find you when they're traveling or when they want to come visit you, is they're just going straight to Google Maps or Apple Maps. So make sure your listings are accurate there. The domain is kind of secondary, but I think, you know, personally, I think domain names that that are a little bit friendlier when you're tourist focused are nice. So I would go with poppies and petals, probably, if I were you. Wow, that's a lot of P's. But I don't think that's the most important thing for your SEO. It's more important that the title of your website is accurate on your web page, and that you've optimized your website for search engine throughout the content of your pages as well. Okay. So I have time for one more question. Brian, you and I could have a whole workshop just on cannabis marketing. Maybe we should do that. The last question I'm going to take is, do you have any recommendations regarding trademark strategies? So my father is an intellectual property attorney, and I know like just a tiny, tiny little bit about trademark and IP. But I do know that from the very beginning of naming your business, you want to be aware of the fact if that intellectual property is protectable. So if you're at that point where you're naming a business or a sub business, or, you know, like an offering that you're going to have, it's really a good idea to do some upfront research. And you can do that through the different, I won't get into the technical aspects of this, but you can do basic searches through the US government and the Secretary of State to make sure the name is available, and to see if somebody else has already trademarked or protected that name or that graphic. And there's a difference between you know, a logo mark and just a name. So it's really worthwhile to do this at the beginning, before going down a path where you want to brand like, you know, so-and-so's country house. Maybe you're branding an offering on your property, your overall business is already trademarked, but that can be a good idea. And in general, I think awareness of intellectual property is really important, and it can be advisable to actually go down that path of protecting your intellectual property. Because, you know, part of what, and this intersects with the conversation that Brian and I could have about appellation having, you know, integrity to naming. Like, you can name a business anywhere in the world, Sonoma, but there's something authentic and unique about Sonoma, and sometimes it's important to protect that property. You can't protect it for the city overall, but, you know, something that you name might be able to further protect the brand. Okay, I think that I'm at my time.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah.